Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Truth here on soon to be John Rocha channel. I am, got a lot going on in my mind, got a lot going on in my life right now. We've made some moves around the background here, making some changes, doing some different things going on here, just trying to I know I'm saying this, I'm trying to say I'm making the background a little less busier, but it's a little busy right now because we're still kind of in the process of making some changes to the look, to make it a little cleaner, a little more precise. So we'll see. But yeah, that was like the focus of my mind earlier today. And then I watched the South Park episode, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which absolutely went nuclear on Trump and everything involved with the MAGA movement. I was really surprised by how far they went, considering they just signed a massive deal for $1.5 billion. And Colbert just got essentially show counsel for political reasons of financial decision. But just as I was like considering whether I was going to go live or not or do a review of that, the news came that Hulk Hogan had passed, and this is a really interesting situation for me. A lot of complicated feelings. So I thought I'd pop on here for a little bit to talk about it, and and hear from you guys. Send in, so if you want to put in some comments or send in your Streamlabs super chats as we go along. It's pinned in the chat and all of that, and in the description of the video. But yeah, a lot went on for me when I saw the news that he had passed, 71 years old, apparently surrounded by family and friends. It was a cardiac arrest, at least that's what TMZ is reporting right now. And what can I tell you? For those who maybe are new to me or new to my show or new to my channel, maybe you saw the South Park. Oh, sorry about this one. Shoot. Maybe you saw the South Park thing and you're like, oh, let me see what he's got to say about this. What's the Hulk Hogan stuff? And well, then you should know I was a massive fan of Hulk Hogan growing up. I mean, such an integral part of my life. So I'm just going to talk about it. And if you want to tune in, tune in. If you want to drop out, drop out. That's just, I'm going to talk about it for the first probably 20, 30 minutes of the show. And then we'll get into the South Park stuff. And if there's any questions at the end, I'll answer them. But yeah, I mean, just a tough situation for me on so many levels because, as I said, I grew up being a massive fan of Hulk Hogan for so many reasons. You know, he's the guy who led the way at the first WrestleMania. He came along at a time in my life when I was being bullied by a lot of kids, and so seeing someone like him and cheering for the times the underdog, the guy who was constantly getting betrayed, the guy who was finding a way to defeat people who were using nefarious tactics. And again, I'm a child watching this stuff, and it really worked on me. You know, I know he was the king and the top dog at WWE, but when you're a kid, all you see is this hero who is fighting against all these people trying to do terrible stuff to him. And of course, as you get older, you realize the game and it's all scripted and everybody's playing a character. But when you're young, it's like, oh my God, what is this? I love this. And this wasn't a time when you had the internet and dirt sheets and all this kind of stuff, and you could read about, people questioning the conversations about whether it was real or not, and the story about the Iron Sheik and Hacksaw being caught in the same car. Like, those are things that didn't filter down to a lot of us, and so for us it was like just amazing. This was right at the time when pro wrestling became huge, the first wave of it becoming huge, and Hogan was a massive reason for that. And so for me, and even the prayer, say your prayers, the demandments, that's stuff that I kind of instilled into my life as well when I was a young kid, about, do the right thing, believe in God, lift weights and eat, all of those things. So those things helped turn my life around at 15, and start lifting weights and start working out and start doing all these kinds of things. And so, yeah, it was such an important part of my life, and I lived and died with Hogan matches. I mean, I remember WrestleMania 3, I went over to a friend's house to see this because we were a poor family. We couldn't afford at the time pay-per-view. And those pay-per-views at the time, I think, were like $100 or $125 or something outrageous like that, if I remember correctly, back in the 1980s. And I remember a friend of mine, Jason Griffin, he had a his mom was cool with buying these pay-per-views for him, so he would invite me over to watch these matches, and I remember being there all day for WrestleMania 3 and seeing the match with Hogan and Andre, and I just was just I mean, that was the culmination of everything that led to in my fandom that led to that moment, him body slamming Andre. And of course, later as you get older, you go like, oh well, he body slammed Andre a few times in different iterations in the past, which you didn't know about. Again, you didn't know about when you were a young teenager or a kid watching this stuff, and you were just so blown away by it. And his promos, I mean, those of you who remember me in the Schmodown, as he's the belt back there, you know, I was very influenced by Hogan's promos, The Rock's promos, and Stone Cold's promos. Those are the things that went into a lot of the impromptu promos that I would do after matches or before matches. Um, that style, because I just loved how he was, you know, some brother, and just get into stuff. And it's before it became parody, before it became ridiculed. It was amazing to watch it when you were a kid. And so I really loved him, man. Honestly, I really loved him. And I remember when he faced the Warrior in WrestleMania 6. I remember this being such a massive um, event, you know, because you were leading. I was coming of age to the point where now I understood he was he was a face. Warrior was a face. And so they were facing each other, belt versus belt. And it was huge. I mean, I can't even tell you, for those of you who didn't grow up during that time, like people were talking about this in like school and out in the neighborhood stores, and people were, it was well known. This was a mainstream thing that was happening. Big networks were covering it. You know, it was a massive deal. You know, now, of course, it's just um, standard to see that coverage of big events coming out. The John Cena heel turn, all of that was massive, you know. So for me, he was a big hero. And when he lost to Warrior, I remember just being super down about it. Just super like, oh man, I can't believe it. It's really over. And I wasn't a cynical 20 or 30-year-old like the people who were older than me watching wrestling at the time, who were happy to see Hogan lose the belt because they were sick of the quote unquote 5 moves of doom and all of that. To me, it was like, wow, my hero finally lost, like legitimately, right? It wasn't nefarious tactics. It wasn't brass knuckles. It wasn't a ball shot. It wasn't powder in the face. It was a legitimate loss, even though, I mean, later you see Hogan kicking out real quickly after the 3 instead of letting the loss, instead of giving him a legitimate win. But well, what do you call that? I guess I can't remember what they call it, where they should lay there after the 3 count to really put someone over. I guess they didn't put him over, I guess I would say fully. But, you know, I remember that moment and being like, "Oh, man, what now?" And then, of course, he went through the different iterations and found his way back to the belt, just like he did when he'd lost it and took it back from Randy. I mean, the Mega Power stuff, I'm wearing my Randy shirt in honor of him, Randy, because you know, and I'll tell you this, I tossed away all my Hogan shirts because of things that happened recently, but we'll get to that. But anyway, it was just massive for me. He was so big in my world and in my life, and I remember just being so caught up in everything that was going on with pro wrestling because of him. He was the funnel of, I mean, Dusty was my first wrestler that I ever loved, Dusty Rhodes, watching old Georgia Championship Wrestling, NWA Wrestling, and of course Flair. But I didn't love Flair. I didn't love Flair the way I loved Dusty and the way I really loved Hogan, right? Dusty was like my gateway drug to Hogan, so to speak. And just Hogan was so massive. It's hard to really quantify for you all how big he was. You know, maybe like The Rock, I guess, at the pinnacle of The Rock's powers. Hogan was like that big. He wasn't in movies that were worth a damn, but he was just so big in the mainstream. So for me, there was so much that was caught up in like, you know, loving what he was doing and having him overcome all the odds, handicap matches, friends turning on him, very famous. Paul or Mr. Wonderful turn on him. I think Tugboat turned on him. Remember Tugboat when they became the natural disasters with Earthquake. Yeah, there were so many people. I think Sid Vicious turned, like there were so many people that turned on Hogan throughout. Like, Savage, obviously, very famous one as well. And then Andre, of course, the Andre one was massive. I mean, those things are still legendary. The Piper's Pits with Hogan and the Giant, where he rips his shirt off and he's like, no, no, you know, I mean, that's maybe the best acting Hulk Hogan ever did. was when he was reacting to Andre ripping his shirt in the blood and the chain being ripped off with the cross. I mean, like, this is great, right? And then his yes when he agreed to the fight echoes through the halls forever. You know, it's such an amazing moment. And the match was good. It wasn't great. That's kind of the thing with Hogan is the matches were never amazing necessarily, but the emotional journey they took you on were pretty great. Except I would say the Rock match in WrestleMania 18, I think that was probably the best WrestleMania main event that he ever wrestled. And Hogan did an incredible, The Rock did an incredible job with Hogan, playing off Hogan and playing with the switches in the tide and all of that happened throughout the match of who's face, who's heel. So it was great, you know. So for a very long time, I had a soft spot for Hogan. Even through the Gawker stuff, I was like, well, they videotaped him by himself at his house. And look, you know, I think it's horrible what he said, obviously. But again, you're in the privacy of your own home. You don't expect to be videotaped or recorded in the privacy of your own home. Not saying that it's okay to be racist, but I was looking at it like, oh, you know, I felt bad for him. The stuff with his son and that car crash, that really kind of started to bother me even more on top of the Gawker stuff. And then all the other scandals that came around him, the steroids trial there with Vince. And as you get older, you start to hear from other wrestlers and you start to hear from some of the comments they made about him. And yeah, you can easily dismiss it. Lord knows, you know, quite a few of the players in the Schmodown said terrible shit about me behind my back, which Christian told me about. And, you know, and it was just like, oh, yeah, of course. And it's because, you know, they want to be on top. And so they're upset that someone else is on top and they want the shine. And so I was able to dismiss some of the other wrestlers' comments through the years, like, oh, they're jealous or they, you know, they're mad they didn't have the thing or they thought they were really going to be the shit. When in fact, they didn't have that extra oomph that you need to be over the top. And so it it was easy to dismiss initially, and then as the controversy started piling up, and as you started reading more and more about people's comments about him, it started to sour me a little bit on Hogan. But but every time he came back, I was happy to see him. I watched that Hogan Knows Best reality show. I was into everything he was doing. I would buy the shirts, I'd buy some of the merch. I still there's a legendary wrestling shirt of him, I think posing or kneeling down, and it says Ichiban. Or no, actually, it's just an Ichiban shirt with Hogan's name in, I think, Japanese letters or something. It's an amazing shirt, and I've never found it. It's like my white whale of wrestling shirts. But so when I tell you this, so much of my life I loved and enjoyed him, and he was such an integral part of my childhood. Just like Stallone, like those guys are the guys that inspired me to work out and fight back and stand my ground. And it's stupid. It's ridiculous now looking back as a man of age, looking back to the things that formed you when you were a teenager or a young adult. But those are important times. Those are really important nostalgic times. And the people involved in those times, um, are important people in your life. And you try to forgive them. You try to give them grace. You try to give them a little bit more leeway, a runway. Like when people go after Tom Cruise now, I still get upset because Tom was also another massive part of my life in the 80s with Top Gun and other movies. So I have my people that I defend and I try to give grace to. But as the years go on and the controversies pile up and the really confusing decisions that he made, it really knocked all the veneer off of him and the bloom off the rose of Hogan. And you start to see that this is a guy who really was very limited in his ability to understand the mistakes he was making and to take responsibility in the correct way for the mistakes he was making. Like even the stuff with him coming back to WWE, and he tried to have a meeting with the black wrestlers, and the way that meeting went and the way people related. I think Kofi Kingston, some of the things he said, just like, oh my God, and I know other black wrestlers have defended him and stuff, but it is tough to look at and it's tough to process. And as I said, the car crash, then all the drama with his wife and the divorce, then Brooke Hogan separating from herself from him and her mom so that she could kind of live a normal life. And God love her. She was very gracious to accept my follow on Instagram because she doesn't accept too many people that follow her on Instagram. It's a private account. You have to request follow. So clearly she is a person who's very guarded of her life. And having watched that show, the reality show, having seen the things that they endured, you just kind of go, yeah, I get it. I get it. I get what's going on there. So it's messing with my OCD a little bit. So yeah, I mean, you see that, and so you go, okay, I get it. I get it. But that's why it's so complicated today. Like I should be in pieces, honestly. I was more upset about Malcolm Jamal Warner dying earlier this week than I am today about Hogan. I'm more just kind of sad. And I thought I'd be, and I'm sad because I don't feel more, and I would like to feel more. But unfortunately, the stuff he did in recent years, and his Real American Beer, and him coming out to the convention to support a man who was pretty abhorrent, in my opinion, tearing his shirt and all of that nonsense. And the comments and the things that have come out about him, it's just, it makes it a bummer that he's gone, but it makes it a bummer even more so that I don't feel more. Because like 5 years ago, I probably would be devastated, utterly devastated. But this morning, I'm just kind of like, ah, you know, and maybe that'll change, but I kind of don't think so. And so it's just heartbreaking for me personally, because he's such a important part of my life. But he's passed. So let's talk about the things that I loved about him. I don't want to dwell too much in the controversies. Everybody knows the controversies, but I mean, you have to also give the man his due. And I think someone said, my friend said it best on his text. I don't want to say his name just in case he doesn't want me to say it, put his name out there. But he said, what did he say? Where is it? What did he say? I'm sad that Hulk Hogan, the wrestler from the 1980s, is gone. Terry Bollea can get fucked. And I think that's a sentiment that's the place I'm probably in more than anything else. Like, I'm sad the Hulk Hogan is gone, but Terry Bollea can kiss my ass. And so I would just want to talk about the things. I mean, like growing up, as I said, like we should celebrate I mean, Hulk Hogan was amazing, like amazing. The way he was able to grab the public and capture their attention, and the kids, and the way they did those promos, and the stuff that you saw him doing and talking about, the things he was supporting there, the stuff with Cyndi Lauper, the Rock and Wrestling Connection, all of that was great. His stuff with Savage, people want to bash him. Sorry about that. People want to bash him and make fun of him now and ridicule him looking back on the stuff. But that stuff really worked. And he worked great programs. Like, the programs worked because of Hogan as well. Like, people want to credit, Randy, people want to credit Orndorff or Andre's. Like, Hogan had to play off of that stuff. And at the beginning, Hogan understood how to give and take and not be so caught up in putting himself over. It was putting the angle over, and later when he had more to lose, he was much more concerned with putting himself over. As those of you who know the whole Sting Hogan debacle in WCW that led to that terrible main event will testify to that. But like, he was so amazing, man. I mean, the 24-inch pythons, getting in the gym. I'm saying he influenced me so much. And so watching him win those belts, well, I mean, I think he won the belt 6 times. Watching him do the things he did, the tag teams he was involved in, the way he promoted the events, even the smaller events like Saturday Night's Main Event or their version of Raw earlier in the days, the Sunday shows, like all the stuff that he was doing was so great. So you have to give him credit for carrying professional wrestling. Nobody would still be talking about professional wrestling if it wasn't Hogan. I don't care what Flair did or NWA. It was not an explosion globally the way WWE was. And a massive reason for that is Hulk Hogan. Yes, Vince McMahon promotion, all that, and the terrible shit he did behind the scenes to a lot of the promotions. But it was Hulk Hogan. And so you have to give the man his flowers. It was Hulk Hogan who was carrying that thing on his back. And yes, you had Piper and Savage and all these other great wrestlers. Steamboat came through. Flair even came through eventually. You had all the great Bret Hart. You had all the Hart Foundation. You had them all going through in the 80s. Jake the Snake. But it was really Hogan, right? Everything stopped and started with Hogan. He was the massive reason. was success, and he carried the WWE on his back and brought it to prominence. And I don't think, kind of like Jordan, when Jordan was a massive superstar, I think there's still money owed to Hogan, money owed to Jordan for what they were able to do to put the WNBA back on top. Put the NBA back on top and put the WWE over the top for lesser money when they were building it up, And so it was amazing what he was able to do. As I said, I lived and breathed with it. And then the Andre stuff was amazing. Then the Warrior stuff was amazing. And then when he went to WCW and became the NWO. Oh, shit, I don't even have a picture of that. What the hell? I was rushing to get this up today. But yeah, when he became a member of the NWO, that changed professional wrestling. It made people respect him all over again for his ability to read the tea leaves. And I know, hear the stories. Oh, it was Bischoff took the idea off something from Japan and brought it to the WCW. It was going to be Sting. It was Nash and Hall were going to be part of it. It was going to be Sting, and then Sting didn't want to do it, so Hogan did it, but Hogan had a tough time embracing it. But who gives a shit how it all came together? When it did come together, it was mother effing gold. It was gold. It got me back into pro wrestling. I had fallen off of it in the late 80s. I even didn't even watch the WrestleMania 9 one. I didn't even care about that. I only read about it later. So I was moving on from wrestling because I was doing other things. And then when Hogan went to WCW, there was this feeling okay, maybe it's the red and gold again, or it'd be kind of cool. The red and yellow, rather. It's kind of cool to see that again. But when he turned at the right time for those of us who'd grown up loving him, because we were coming into a certain age in the 1990s where we were much more cynical about the world. We were much more about wanting truth. The music was reflecting that with gangster rap that had blown up in the late 80s into the early 90s. The movies were reflecting that because that was the birth of the independent movement, which was connected to the 1970s films that were questioning the system, daring to talk about sexuality in a certain way, exploring other avenues of existence that were not being profiled in films in the 1980s as consistently. And so it was this strip away of the veneer of falsity and get to the ugly, bitter, gritty truth, And so the NWO represented that for me in wrestling. They caught it at the right time. They said what they wanted to say. They were the bad guys that you wanted to cheer for. And all of a sudden, the face paint and the characters from the 1980s looked incredibly out of date, as did 1980s movies when you got into the 90s. And things changed, and Hogan was so smart to catch the wave, and he ran with that. I mean, he rode that wave. Yeah, they did eventually crash on the shore, and the NWO fell apart, and it ended up leading to WCW getting bought by Vince. Yes, but for those 2 to 5 years that the NWO was around with Hogan leading with Nash and Hall, it was some of the greatest nights of wrestling ever. And the Monday Night Wars, none of that would have been possible without Hogan. Sting turning heel would have never had the effect that it did with Hogan. And I still put that at number one. Fuck the John Cena heel turn. I mean, that has become such, as I predicted, a flaccid, wet fart of a heel turn. Yes, that night, some people were shocked that a guy who was way past his prime turned heel so we can watch these terrible matches the last few months. But when Hogan turned heel, he was still in his prime. He was still able to deliver in the ring. And it was great to watch him in the matches that he had. Of course, there's the finger poke of doom. Less said about that, the better. But he was fighting with the young towns like the Giant, him and Nashi, or him and Goldberg, him and Sting. It was amazing to watch that in the 90s. And that's why that heel turn is still number one. And no one can convince me otherwise with their retconning or their revisionist history. That was earthquakes because Hogan was still doing it. Cena came out of retirement from being in Hollywood and all that. Hogan was still doing it. And so when he made the turn, it was massive, massive, massive. And it caught those of us who have been his fans when he was at the Goody Two Shoes in the 80s, who occasionally slipped into heel tendencies. we were in heaven watching him lead the NWO, and because it was sticking it in the face of the establishment. It's why I'll be NWO for life. It's why it's called the truth. It's why it was called the Outlaw Nation. It's finger poking in the face of the establishment, putting it right in its eye. And I love that the NWO did that and what they represented, and eventually it got too big and whatever. But then he came back to the WWE, got massive response, and they ended up putting the strap on him. That's how big the response was when he came back to the WWE, became NWO, came back as NWO, and then of course the Rock and Hogan match turned him, and then he went face again, and people loved it. He defeated Triple H and won the belt. So there's so much about what he did in the world of pro wrestling that is amazing. And again, we would not have this business without him. I don't care what they try to tell you. Don't listen to anybody else. We would not have the business as big as it is without Hogan, which makes all the stuff that happened afterwards, it makes his passing all the more complicated to process and deal with and navigate and have feelings about, because of how great he was when he was on the stage, how great he was when he was there, and I think it's amazing that Hogan outlived Flair. I mean, it's that Flair outlived Hogan. That Flair, who's had 1,034 heart attacks, has been able to outlive Hogan. And he delivered a nice tribute to him. Where is it? I know I have it here somewhere. Where is it? I thought I had it here. Oh, here it is. Okay. Flair said, "I'm absolutely shocked to hear about the passing of my close friend Hulk Hogan. Hulk has been by my side since we started the wrestling business. An incredible athlete, talent, friend, and father. Our friendship has meant the world to me. He was always there for me, even when," I don't know why he's capitalizing every word in this. It's weird. "Even when I didn't ask for him to be. He was one of the first to visit me when I was in the hospital with a 2% chance of living, and he prayed by my bedside. Hulk also lent me money when Reed was sick. Hulkster, no one will ever compare to you. Rest in peace, my friend." And so, and I get it. People want to focus on the negative stuff, and I totally respect that. Everyone's got their process on how to process stuff like this. So I'm not going to tell you how to feel about it, but whatever. But for me, it's just really complicated to see how this all went down, and it's complicated when you see people talk about this stuff. So, and it's just like, I mean, Stallone, for me, as I've seen recently, he's gone the Trump route as well. And so it's tough for me. I love Stallone maybe even more than Hogan, possibly, probably, yes, more than Hogan. And it's been tough for me to see him make these decisions and do these things and prop up this fake wannabe tough guy. And it's tough. I still think I'll be devastated when Stallone goes, or when Schwarzenegger goes, another personal icon from the 80s for me that changed my life. But like, the Hogan one is tough. And I'll probably still be processing it. I'll probably still watch his matches with joy and remembrance, to separate to use that phrase, to separate the art from the artist, right? Because what he did in the ring was art, whether it's low art or high art, it was art. And so for me, I will always remember and thank the universe for his existence, because he changed my life and he gave me a hero to root for at a time when I needed heroes, when my life was full of bullying and getting beat up and made fun of and ridiculed and hurt by people and friends who would occasionally betray me in middle school or high school, which mirrored a lot of what Hogan went through in the WWE. So, for me, there's always going to be a nostalgic love for my formative years of Hogan and what he brought to them. But of course, all the controversies sadly stain it all. And the last couple of years for me was pretty much the straw that broke the camel's back. And I just kind of lost my love for him, which is sad, honestly. Sad for me as a person who cares and puts his heart out on his sleeve, for better or worse. It was sad. I donated all my Hogan shirts. I didn't even try to resell them. I just donated them to whoever could want them, and I put it at Goodwill. Got rid of all my Hulk Hogan paraphernalia. So I have nothing to wear to honor the man, um, because of all of that. And that was my decision. Just like it was my decision to love him for so many years, it was my decision to finally walk away from it and make a decision for myself. And so, but today is the day to honor him, um, for what he did do and the happiness and joy that he brought to millions and millions of people, and the amount of people whose lives he changed by being Hulk Hogan, who grew up with him and who idolized him and who learned from him. And yes, you could say, oh, it's scripted, it's all fake. Yes, of course. But when you're a kid at that age, at that time, you bought into it. And when he's telling you about the demandments and the prayers and all that stuff and the eat your vitamins and be respectful and all of that, listen to your mother and father, like all those things were if important to kids like me in formative years who were getting into pro wrestling. So I think he affected millions and millions of lives. Like it's not overreaching to say that. And so many people were touched by what he did and moved by what he did and cheered him on from afar. And I know there's still a number of people who still cheer for, especially if you're a Trump or MAGA person, you're even more excited that he came to your side overtly at that Republican National Convention. But you can't take away, no matter what, for us, you can't take away our joy of having experienced that. And I think that's what I'll come back to when I think about him is the great matches and the great moments and the great promos and the happiness and the cheering and in my pajamas as I watch him win a match and this doughy bowl haircut Latino kid jumping up and down when he wins a match and all of that and having my dad go, what's wrong with you? And all of these things. And I saw him once live at the Capitol Center. My father took me, much to his chagrin, took me to see them. And it was amazing to see Hogan in person at that age. And so many things. But I also recognize all the stuff afterwards. And it is what it is. And I think I fully embrace who he was as a person and judge him as such. But I'll never, not still enjoy the moments and the matches and the promos and the scenes and the vignettes and some of the stuff with him that just decorated my life, and so I do say rest in peace because he was suffering through a lot of health stuff. And just because we have a different political opinion doesn't mean he doesn't deserve to rest in peace. Certainly the racism stuff is difficult. But you have to take someone's life as a whole and balance it and measure it out in equal amount. And so for me, so much more good happened from him in my life than negative. And so I have to look at it that way, that I accept all the negative stuff and then I accept all the positive stuff as well. And I have my own personal journey with how to honor him and how to, let him go, respect and peace, rest in peace, so to speak. So, again, Warlock says, I don't separate the art. Great. And Warlock, you've done everything right in your life. You've never done anything wrong, I'm sure. And you've never said anything wrong. You've never made a bad misstep. You're a perfect human being, I'm sure. And I'm sure you're a great person, not a garbage human being. Because I know that a garbage human being wouldn't come on to someone's stream who's expressing complicated feelings for the loss of someone who was a childhood icon for him. And a garbage human being wouldn't put out angry, toxic, vile messages in the feed, right? That's not what a garbage human being would do. No. A non-garbage human being would absolutely attack a person for expressing complicated feelings about a person who was very influential in their lives, right? That's what a non-garbage human being would do. Am I correct on that, A Warlock? Take a look at yourself, buddy. Get some help, get some therapy, because that's not what a person who is not a garbage human being does. You're a garbage human being for doing that. You're a garbage human being for coming in with your hate and your anger and your vile toxicity and your rhetoric and all of that. As I said, you're allowed to feel as you feel about this man, but there's a way to quantify everything. And so you coming in with your anger and your hatred and your desire to judge other people because you haven't accomplished anything in your life and you want to shit on someone who did for their actions and missteps and horrible things they said, fine. That's your right. But don't think you're not a garbage human being with some of the actions you've taken and some of the things you posted. So take a look at yourself, buddy. It's you who's the garbage human being. A man has died. A man has died. A life has left the earth. Okay. So it's okay to point out all the great things he did and balance it out with all the bad things he did and look at him as a whole. And I hope someone in your life, a warlock, when they give your eulogy, they balance you out as a whole and they take and give grace to some of your missteps and mistakes, which I will bet $1 million you've made numerous times with people in your life. And they will balance it out when they deliver your eulogy. And that goes for everybody. Because I haven't been reading the comments. I hope someone is able to do that with you. So just want to let you know. All right. Let's move on from that. Well, see, as I said, yes, a black man can understand that he was an icon, but Hogan wasn't. Absolutely. Of course, yes, I said it. I don't know if he's unapologetically racist because he did try to apologize. He did try to say he was sorry and all this stuff. So, he did. You can't say unapologetically because he did try to apologize. Again, I'm not trying to excuse the man for the things he did because I hated the things he said and the things that he was heard on tape saying, and so that's the way I look at those things. But what do you say to the black wrestlers who've come out to defend Hogan, like Booker T and other people? Like, what do you say about them? Yes, feel the way you want to feel, but also the man has just died. Like, there's a way to navigate that where you accept the negative and also be okay with the positive. So, anyway, all right, let's move on from this. Rest in peace, brother. Yeah, rest in peace, man. And of course, condolences to your family, condolences to his friends, and many fans who still love him, and the many fans like me who have complicated feelings about him. Sending out condolences to all of you all and myself on this one as we process this loss, because I think a lot of us are probably hurt that we're not feeling more for this, because there should be tributes on high, there should be massive packages put out and all of that, but so many of us are lost in some complicated feelings about it. So, and we're allowed to be. So, all right, let's move on to another thing here. I've seen some people have left some super chats. Thank you so much for sending them in. Wiley Tess said, "Sorry, John, for your loss. I know he meant a lot to you before all the awful stuff he supported lately. You're the best." Thank you, Wiley. Appreciate that. You're right. He did mean a lot, and still does in some ways. Because those are things that are ingrained in you in terms of the things you were inspired to do because of people who were in your formative years who affected you. Ethan Linares VA says, "Completely lost all childhood love I had for him. His undying support for Evil was just too much. I wish I was sad like I would have been as a kid." Yeah, it's fair, Ethan. I think your feelings are valid. You're absolutely valid to feel this way, brother. It's part of the complicated legacy of this man. So I absolutely hear you, my friend, and send understanding for the way you feel. Mike Gallagher says Hulk and Ozzy. Oh, yeah, Ozzy as well earlier this week. I found Ozzy with Iron Man used as the entry song for someone. Yes, then discovered Rocky because of Hogan. My grandfather got the pay-per-view for WrestleMania 1. He died 3 days before it. Oh, we watched it the night of his funeral. Lots of emotions this week. Wow, Mike. Damn, Mike, sending you all kinds of fucking strength and thoughts of comfort, dude. But double whammy for you in so many ways. And I'm sure a lot of people losing Ozzy. Ozzy's very important to the metal community. And it isn't like there isn't a Venn diagram crossover of the wrestling community and the heavy metal community. I'm sure they cross over pretty big. So I'm sure a lot of people are feeling it this week. And if you grew up in the 80s, Malcolm Jamal Warner. So that's your threesome right there. I'm sure that Venn diagram is actually bigger than people think. Malcolm Jamal, Ozzy Osbourne, and Hulk Hogan. Those are 80s icons that we've lost all in 1 week. And people were feeling it. People are feeling it. So thank you, Mike. I appreciate it, brother. Let's move on. Calvin said this. John, I really believe you don't have to be the most perfect human being to be allowed to criticize others, especially if it's a public person exposing themselves for decades. Yes, criticize, fine. But if I'm on here talking about someone who affected my life and talking about the complicated feelings, to allow your rage out in such a toxic way, the man is not even cold yet. I think there is a difference, right? And so that's the difference in there. I'm not saying you have to be perfect to criticize others, but there's a time and a place for everything, right? And is this really the time? Is this really the place? That's my question there, Calvin. So nuance, guys, nuance. All right, let's move on to this situation last night. I look, I'm scared to put these photos up because I don't know if they're gonna come from my channel or take the show down. But last night, South Park went super nuclear on Donald Trump with their new episode for season 27 called Sermon on the Mount, where they delivered one of the most hilarious and controversial and just just shocking evisceration of a sitting president. They had him like Saddam with Satan from the South Park movie. They had him in some really unsettling images that were there on the walls. It was crazy stuff. And then they did a PSA where they AI'd his face onto a guy who is overweight there crawling through the desert. It was madness, this episode. And I also think it was one of the most incredibly genius episodes. This is maybe the best episode they've done in years, South Park, because there's more going on here than you think. It wasn't just Trump. Like, I think that was fascinating about the episode. And if you guys haven't watched it, I'm going to spoil some stuff, but I hope you guys don't care. But like, this was insane. Like, I just was so blown away at the genius of this episode. Yes, on the top layer, you see people on the right and Trump's people going insane. Oh, Trump. But they used Cartman to go after NPR. Like, it wasn't like it was only Trump. They went after a lot of people here. They went after the people who bent the knee to Trump. They went after people who betrayed the Democratic Party, like Jake Tapper and what's his face over there, Joe Scarborough and others, with that political donor who switched, Lindy Lee. I forget her name is Lindy Lee, something like that. I can't remember what her name is. Like, they went out using that PC principle as the thing, and they also exposed this idea that this hypocrisy that the right was mad for years that they were being indoctrinated to believe in the equality and DEI and all this stuff. And here they are pushing their idea of what they think is correct and forcing people to be a part of it and using the PC principle to talk, and then cloaking it all in Jesus and God and all of that kind of stuff. I thought it was genius. What a brilliant commentary at a time when everyone is scared and everyone is bending the knee. I mean, Columbia University just paid the government $200 million so they could save their funding. They basically said that the government is okay to come in and tell them who's allowed to be enrolled in Columbia University, who isn't, to make sure they're hitting their white quota. How ironic is that? Now the other side is calling for quotas. The other side is calling for, like, I think it's fascinating to watch this. If you're upset about what the other side is doing and you become the other side when you get into power, you're essentially just repeating the same patterns. And so it was a great evisceration of that. And the commentary using Jesus in essence throughout the whole thing as a commentary about, like, even he is like sued into the situation. And he talks about Colbert when he's doing that Sermon on the Mount. Like, we don't want to get canceled. This is amazing because this episode essentially put Paramount in the crosshairs right as they're about to try to do this merger. And they just signed like a $1.4, $1.3 billion deal, the South Park guys did with Paramount to keep doing the show. So, and if you study everything that's been going on this week, David Ellison came out, who's going to be the guy in charge there at Skydance of Paramount after the merger, and said, we are not going to have DEI practices at Paramount. We're not going to have any kind of DEI problem. And here is South Park coming in and just eviscerating the man who is in charge of the government, and the FCC guy serves at the pleasure of him, who is going to approve this merger potentially. So I just thought it was genius to make a commentary throughout on everybody, right? Like the opening of the show is Cartman complaining about NPR being canceled by the president because he loved listening to. He talks about derogatory lesbians complaining about this or that, or talking. It was so derogatory in the commentary he was making about the left. So South Park, again, cleverly poking fun at the left. And these were, I was laughing at these jokes, because the left most people on the left can take a joke. Most people on the right, it seems like, can't. And so it was hilarious, the stuff that Cartman was saying. And so this underlying storyline with him trying to figure out who he is now, if he can't be the rebel anymore, he can't be the person who has antagonized everybody by being inappropriate, that it's okay for everyone to be inappropriate, I thought was great. And the fact that Kyle doesn't say much throughout the episode, I thought was an interesting part of the episode as well. And the stuff and then eventually Cartman with Butters trying to get him to be a part of what he's doing in some suicide pact, I thought was also genius, because then you realize suicide pact can't go forward because, of course, they're in an electric car. So, those are the things that you look at and you go, this is smart. This is how people of intelligence, which of course they're trying to stop having people of intelligence be a part of our world anymore by trying to stop the funding for all these higher education institutions. But seeing all of that, it's just so funny to see how they put it all together, And so I just was so in love with what they did in this episode. And look, yes, of course, I'm an anti-Trump person. And so seeing the commentaries that they're with those pictures on the wall and the thing with him and Satan mirroring the thing with him and Saddam from the movie years ago, it's kind of interesting to see this kind of coming a little bit full circle and comparing him constantly to the Middle East thing. And also the hypocrisy of being Christians, yet when you see the shindig he's having on the White House lawn and how depraved and hedonistic it is while they're singing about Christ. This is just brilliant stuff, exposing the hypocrisy that lies at the foundation of MAGA in so many ways. I just thought was brilliant and smart. Like, it wasn't low-hanging fruit. Like, that's the thing. That's the brilliance about South Park when you watch it and they really do it right. It's actually an intelligent approach through encased in what looks to be low-level art. And I think that's what's the gift of South Park, when they get it right, when they're really on point. And they were on point in this episode, throughout this episode, and I just was so blown away by it. I thought the PSA went a little far. Like, I was like, that is, man, even for me, I was like, that is madness. That is way too far. And I love that they end with Butters and Cartman says, like, they have an exchange, and Cartman says, as the credits are rolling, right when it says Trey Parker and Matt Stone, he says, "I love you, man." And that's essentially Trey Parker, I think, saying that to Matt Stone, like, hey, if this is our last episode and they cancel us, I love you, man. It's been great making the show. So again, this is the kind of gutsiness that you don't see from older rebels. Like, older rebels get soft. Older rebels become Jake Tapper writing a book about Biden instead of saying anything about Trump, or Joe Scarborough, or you see so many of these old rebels who all of a sudden get soft as they get older. Like, George Carlin was one of the rare old rebels who stayed a rebel all the way to the end, stayed calling out the bullshit all the way to the end. And I respect that. Bill Burr's doing that now, and it's great to see Bill Burr doing that. And so there has to be art that speaks truth to power, or we do become an authoritarian state, and we do become a dictatorship, an authoritarian state. And we can't become that as America. We can't. And so I think this was a much, much needed. And the timing of this was amazing. The fact that they recorded a Colbert line in this and put that in there for Jesus to say, I thought was brilliant, you know, and of course the hypocrisy of using religion to cover up all these hateful things that they're doing to try to force people to believe in Christ and force people to accept Christ in the classroom, right? You've seen that happening with the 10 Commandments, I think down in Oklahoma, right? They're trying to force the 10 Commandments to be in the class. Now they're trying to force science teachers to teach the Bible instead of evolution. Is what the fuck is going on, you know? And so they're doing the exact same things that they were complaining about the left doing. They're doing the exact, forcing people to accept these things, forcing people. So there's a hypocrisy here that I think was very well exposed and highlighted and ridiculed in this episode of South Park. So I was just over the moon seeing that kind of stuff happen. The White House response, they came, I think they came after this. Yeah, they said, who was this? The White House spokesperson Taylor Rogers told Rolling Stone in a statement this morning, the left's hypocrisy truly has no end. I mean, never mind that they were making fun of both the left and the right. For years, they have come after South Park for what they labeled as offensive content, but suddenly they are praising the show. Just like the creators of South Park, the left has no authentic or original content, which is why their popularity continues to hit record low. So the show hasn't been relevant for over 20 years and is hanging. So after he's saying the left was, you know, oh, the show and this or that, and the show has been bad. The show is like this. Now he's like, the show has been bad and the popularity. Nobody cares about the show. Hanging on by a thread with uninspired ideas and a desperate attempt for attention. They just signed a deal for $1.4 billion. You utter dope. They are perfectly fine. And clearly Paramount wouldn't sign a deal with them if they weren't making money doing South Park. President Trump has delivered on more promises in just 6 months than any other president in our country. And no fourth-rate show can derail President Trump's hot streak. Meanwhile, he's trying to run from the Epstein files, which they allude to in the show, which I thought was hilarious as well. He's had his boy Johnson recess the Congress so they don't have to vote on exposing the Epstein file or releasing the Epstein files. And his people are meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell today to essentially work out a deal for her to probably say only Democrats were in the files, give me a pardon, you know, and meanwhile, it's a hot streak. So, you know, you just kind of look at all this stuff and you go, can't we get a little bit of truth? Can't we get, I mean, to bring it back to Hogan, can't we get a little NWO against this stuff that's going on in our world? Can't we have the rebels poking in the eye of establishment? Because they're the establishment now. They are no longer the rebels, which is what that whole show was about, is Cartman realizing he is the establishment now, not the rebel anymore. So how can his life have any purpose if he's just part of the establishment now? And I thought that was genius. Oh, and the stuff with the South Park residents, you know, the Trump character suing everybody, which is so weak, but the Trump character suing everybody throughout the whole episode, I thought was hilarious as well. And him having to take and suing him for $5 billion. I mean, it was so topical that it felt like they wrote the episode yesterday, you know, with Trump suing the Wall Street Journal for $10 billion for that letter, which they, you know, were happy to have the lawsuit put in front of an Obama appointed judge. Because now when he throws it out, they can say, see, it's Obama and the conspiracy against, it's the deep state again. It's all the stuff that is manufactured. And if you have half a brain, you can see the conspiracy stuff that's going on here and the way they're working things out so that they keep looking like they're the victims of the whole situation. So, yeah, I thought, is that everything I wrote down about the episode? I think it is. Yeah, the PC principal. Oh, I love the Garrison moment. They break into his house. That was hilarious. And the show kept using the F word for gay people. So, like, you know, for all the complaints about them attacking Trump, they totally were goading the left as well throughout the whole episode. I mean, Cartman wearing the woke is dead shirt. I kept thinking of the WNBA players over the weekend wearing "Pay us what you owe us" black shirts with the white lettering. So I don't think that was a reference to that, but the timing of it is hilarious. Faith, yeah, pictures of Trump. Yeah, having Satan say he reminds him of the guy who used to date, which is essentially. Oh, the 60 Minutes segment was genius as well. Having those reporters and anchors being nervous about talking about it because CBS has gotten sued and they've capitulated. So this is a Paramount show ridiculing the president for canceling the Colbert and CBS being okay with ridiculing CBS for canceling the Colbert show through Jesus, and then ridiculing them for bending the knee for 60 Minutes and having those people walk away from the show because they don't have journalistic. They're not allowed to have journalistic freedom to create the shows because they're afraid of Trump. And this is all on David Ellison and Sherry Redstone. And I love that the Writers Guild is calling for an investigation here to find out what's going on, because this needs to be exposed 100%. And I hope there's an attorney general in New York or in LA who is willing to take on this case and subpoena all the text messages and emails from Ellison and Redstone and everybody involved in this merger and put them out there. I would love to see that. But yeah, overall, and I love the beginning of this new season. I thought this episode was genius, utter genius, and I can't wait for the Diddy episode, because if you've seen the preview, the trailer they've released for the shows coming up, Diddy flying through the air and that whatever that thing is, man, I can't wait to see that. So I'm so looking forward to that. So yeah, a great show, y'all. Let's see here. Fredtastic says, R.I.P. Thunderlips. Yeah, all right. Rocky 3. I totally forgot. Yes, Rocky 3 as well. And this was before he became Hulk Hogan. So I had to appreciate him as Hulk Hogan like later, right? Or appreciate Thunderlips through the prism of Hulk Hogan later. But yes, Thunderlips, the ultimate male versus the ultimate meatball. Ethan Linares, Virginia Trey, and Matt still got it 100%. 100%. 100%. They just need to be, art needs to be inspired. And it's just, you've got to find the right. I hate to say this to the right. Well, I don't hate to say it, but you got to accept it. Like, the left's evisceration of the right in art is so much more inventive and funny and creative than the right's evisceration of the left. It really is. It just is. Because the left can take a joke. The right can't. Ethan Linares VA says, I hope this whole season is just ripping Trump. No. I think there's a lot more. There's a lot more. As I said, Puff Daddy or P. Diddy being in the promos makes it fun. There's a lot to make fun of going on in our society right now. And I hope they eviscerate everybody and everything. Cowboys fan says, hi, John, and my fellow nation brothers and sisters. I know Trump is everywhere because of what he's doing here in the U.S., but please don't forget. And I don't know what the second part of it is because he hasn't sent it in yet. Daniel Haygood says, love you, Rocha. Stay sharp. Thank you, Daniel. I do my best. They'll probably cancel my channel now, but I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Karen told me to cancel my... I can't, Karen. I can't. Star Trek Strange New Worlds just debuted. I have to watch Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and I have to watch South Park now, so I'm sorry. Cowboys fan coming in with part 2. What's happening in Gaza as we sleep with our taxpayer money? There are thousands upon thousands laying dead and starving to death, yet we do nothing. Well, that's, I'm not speaking out on that because that's a very complicated issue with a lot of stuff going on. All I'll say is this: I'm heartbroken for all the innocent lives being taken on both sides of this situation. But this situation is like centuries old. And so to speak on it and take a side, for me, the only side I take is that I want to end innocent lives being taken in that region. I hope peace can be found. I hope weapons are no longer taken up to kill people because they're on the other side of an imaginary line in the sand. And it just is devastating when you see the stories and see the videos on all sides of what's going on there. And when you've seen, and have lived as long as I have and seen the videos from all sides that have gone on for decades, and the death and destruction that has happened on all sides for decades, it's just devastating, utterly devastating. So that's what I would say on that. So, all right. And I don't think do I have any Streamlabs that came through? Oh, one. Yeah. Real Talk 365 says, what's going on with Clara and the Sun? A no-show at upcoming festivals, and it wrapped filming in early mid 2024. What have you heard? I haven't heard anything about Clara and the Sun, but I will ask Jeff about it tonight. So yes, guys, don't forget tonight, 4 p.m. PT, we go live with the hot mic, me and Jeff Snyder, and we'll probably talk more about this stuff and other stuff going on in the world of entertainment as well. So join us live and any big Comic-Con news that drops this week. So just want to say that. But Guys, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to wrap it up here. I know Kristen's going to start his show, so if you guys want to head on over there, feel free to do that. I'm going to go take a little bit of a break and then prepare for Hot Mic tonight. I love you all madly. Thanks for sitting. Almost 400 of you were hanging out with me for a majority of the show. So again, I'm very blessed and honored that you would do so and listen to what this idiot has to say about anything. So I appreciate it very, very much. And as I said, for those of you who have complicated feelings or are grieving or couldn't care less, I guess I totally understand all your feelings when it comes to Hogan. And let me know what your thoughts are about Hogan down in the comment section below, and what your thoughts are about this South Park episode. Let me know what you think about it too. So I want to hear what you all think, and if I left out anything as well. So, all right, have a great Thursday. Don't forget 4 p.m. PT. Come back here live, me and Jeff Snyder for the Hot Mic, and I'll talk to you next time with another brand new episode of The Truth. Peace. Until then.